Hello everybody, good evening and welcome to the session on the India's vaccine growth story, right? So very correct apt time for this book to come out and copies of the book are available, so make sure you get a copy and you can get him to sign as well. So today we have the author, Dr. Sajjan Singh Yadav from the Indian Administrative Services, and he has taken the effort to write this beautiful book which is worth a read, not only to understand about the vaccines, but to really understand how the government and the various academic institutions in India work together to make our own vaccine and also make sure that our more than 2 billion jabs were given to our population in a very short span of time. So that is an exciting story that Dr. Yadav explains in this book. So I won't talk much about it now because I think it is much better to hear it from the author. But sir, before we go into the book, you all heard a very good introduction about Dr. Yadav. But I would like a few more words on what all other things that you did from other learning, the so many degrees that you have taken, other than after being in the IAS and even before getting into the IAS. So people understand.
Namaskar. I am basically by education a veterinary doctor, a vet. And then I did my MBA from Delhi University, then did Masters in Public Policy from University of Minnesota, USA. And finally, a doctorate in public health from London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. So I cover all living beings, means the animal kingdom, starting from all animals to human beings. Thank you.
So you can see how he has continued to learn, right? And continue to learn and take, even in spite of reaching, such a high position as an IAS officer, he has gone ahead and continued to learn and even take his doctorate. So with all this, background and all your busy work as an IAS officer in the finance department, how come you ended up writing this book? What is
No, all of us know that the COVID period was really very horrific period. We were all kind of locked down initially. Many of us suffered from the disease and we were all waiting for vaccines to come because the buzzword was the pandemic can be controlled only by vaccines. We can have a mask-free life again only by vaccines. Our social life will come back if we have potent vaccines. Our business will restart or flourish only if we get vaccines. So there was tremendous amount of interest on the subject. Therefore, at that time, I decided, let me research about what vaccines are, though I had basic knowledge, how the vaccines came about, what's happening in COVID, how COVID came about, how the virus evolved, and are we going to have vaccines soon, what kind of vaccines will be there. So I researched a lot about the subject, and in the literature I found so many interesting stories because behind every vaccine there is a story of a scientist, there is a story of a leader, how the vaccine was developed, how it was tested, what used to happen in ancient times. So, and then how India has done, how I came to know myself that India has become slowly a superpower in vaccine production. So there were so many interesting things and how we are going to take up this vaccination drive, how we will vaccinate crores of people back. So therefore I decided let me do a thorough research and come out with a comprehensive book on the subject.
Thank you, doctor. So let me take two questions from there. One, what would have happened that if vaccines had not come so fast? I mean, this is dramatic, right? The way the vaccines are developed, right? So maybe that part of the question I'll ask first. What would have happened to the world if vaccines were not developed?
So what used to happen when we had no vaccines? Like in the ancient times, smallpox was very rampant, but there was no vaccine. What used to happen? Then millions and billions of people used to become sick of the disease. A large proportion, 30% of them used to die, and all the sufferers, most of them used to get scars on the face. So similarly, for COVID also, if we had not had vaccines, so we would have this prolonged periods of lockdown, prolonged periods of no business, no activity, many more hospitalizations. Our hospitals would have been full, even corridors and area would have been full with patients. The mortality would have been very high, especially among elderly people and immunocompromised people. So the life would, some of us would have definitely survived and got immunity, but the damage would have been immense. And the vaccine is, as I will tell, what is the one thing that saves largest numbers of lives on the earth? The one thing that saves largest number of lives is safe drinking water. And the second thing which saves second largest number of lives is vaccines. No other medicine, no other measure, no other substance saves lives than vaccines. So vaccines are thus so important.
Thank you. But typically vaccines, as you all know, take years to develop. Like, earlier maybe 30, 40 years, even recently up to, it would take at least 5 to 10 years for the vaccine, then the clinical trials, all the approvals, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Nowhere or before this COVID, it would have been unimaginable to think of a vaccine coming in like 1 year and things like that. So how was that possible?
See, there are so many factors which made it possible to have vaccines in a period of months. Number one, it was a worldwide pandemic. It affected the developed countries also, because there have been earlier pandemics which affected the developing countries, African countries, and so that kind of attention and money was never put in by the governments. But this pandemic affected the West the most and all other rich countries. So that was one factor. Second, we have had so many of breakthroughs in the recent past, like the messenger RNA thing which came very fast. So because of that. Third, the virus was from a very known family. We call it SARS-CoV-2, initially we called it, because there was another SARS which outbroke earlier. So the virus was from coronavirus family, which was a very known kind of virus. And fourth is that leadership came behind this, all the leadership of all the countries. So we simplified the regulatory processes, we collaborated scientifically, we provided more money for vaccine development, there was a sense of urgency. And third, because the pandemic was going on, so it was easy to get volunteers to test vaccine, easy to compare who vaccinated the results of the vaccine, because people were being infected so fast, whether they got the necessary protection, whether the vaccine was potent or not potent. So all that factors together, they made sure that within less than 1 year, in fact, we had vaccines and a number of vaccines.
Since it was developed so quickly, and what do you think are the risk factors? I mean, should we be worried after taking all these vaccines?
I don't think, and I emphatically say that you should not worry about the side effects of vaccines. The vaccines, all vaccines have some minor side effects. So COVID vaccine also may have like mild fever, some rash, some small clot. But there are many people, knowingly or unknowingly, there are big lobbies who are against vaccines. So this is not a new thing. Since the development of first vaccine by Edward Jenner in 1796, there have been anti-vaxxers. So they just flare up the thing. Like, I am sure that in this crowd, more than 90% of people are vaccinated. So if there is an unfortunate incident of a heart attack, so obviously because 90% are vaccinated, it is highly likely that person vaccinated will get a heart attack and person not vaccinated will not get a heart attack, because probability is 9 out of 10 and 1 out of 10. Similarly, in the country, 220 crore plus people are vaccinated. So if there is such kind of an incident, it is definitely because more people are now vaccinated. There is no correlation, although many events have been highlighted, there is no correlation between heart attack or any serious effect of vaccine on the people who have got vaccines.
Thank you, sir. I think everybody would be very eager to know what is really happening in China, and why is it so late in the journey that they are grappling with the whole pandemic now, because vaccines are there.
Yes.
And I think everybody agrees that the virus came from there, whether it is man-made or natural. I think originated in China, there is no argument.
No argument.
It's no argument that the virus originated in China.
Yes.
And so they had the first exposure and they made the first sequence, I think.
Yes,
The sequence
yes.
was also published by them.
Within 5 days.
Within 5 days.
Yeah.
The genomic sequence of the virus was done in 5 days, right? That fast. That enabled also helped the production of the vaccine.
Yes.
And for about nearly 2 years, they sort of had it under control, it looked like.
Yes.
But now, I think it's in a very bad shape.
Yes. I would say there are many factors why India has been successful, many other countries have been successful, and China has not been so successful. So one of them is definitely concerning the potency of the vaccine. How potent is the vaccine? Because there are many studies in the literature which shows that Sinovac is only 50% potent. So if 2 people got vaccine, it failed in one of them. Normally the efficacy of our vaccines is above 95%. So the chances of a person vaccinated not getting protection are very less. Second, the speed with which we have vaccinated people. And fortunately, we have this election machinery all around because we are very good in conducting elections. China is not so good at conducting elections. So you know that in every small place there is a booth level officer, there is a polling booth, there is a booth level officer, there are people trained who every 2 to 3 years they will conduct election. There is a team of 5 persons with clear responsibility. So we kind of leveraged that machinery very well. We totally relied on that model of polling, voting to vaccinate people. So there were vaccination centers like a polling booth, there were vaccination officer 1, vaccination officer 2, 3, 4 like the polling officer 1, 2, 3, 4. There was a in charge of the station like a presiding officer, and obviously we augmented the supply chain. Probably China fell behind, and more also in terms of creating awareness about need of vaccination. Even now people there are hesitant of getting vaccinated, but India they are not. So because of all these factors, we are safe. We are now all sitting together without mask, and there is no very low morbidity, very rare mortality. So we have done much better.
Thank you, sir. In the book, in the subtitle, you say from Cowpox to Vaccine Maitri.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little more about why this subtitle?
Okay, there is an interesting story behind this cowpox. So some of you would know that who gifted us the first vaccine. The first vaccine, modern vaccine to human beings was gifted, I would say in a way, gifted by cow. Why is that? It is because the cow used to have a disease called cowpox. It was a mild disease which used to also transmit to human beings working in the dairy, especially the dairy maids and others. So it was observed that people who get cowpox, they don't suffer from smallpox. And smallpox was at that time much dreaded than what we see in COVID today. So it used to kill millions of people every year. So everybody was scared of smallpox, and we had deities to pray for smallpox, that smallpox shouldn't happen. So one English doctor, Dr. Edward Jenner, he decided to conduct an experiment in 1796. He had a cowpox patient. He took out some fluid from the pustule of the cowpox patient and injected in an orphan boy. So because of that infection which was transmitted to the orphan boy, he got cowpox. He had some blisters in his hands and some mild fever. Then after a month, Dr. Jenner took out pus from a smallpox patient and injected into that boy. And otherwise the boy would have got full-fledged smallpox, but the boy had nothing. There was not a single symptom. So Then he hypothesized that if you have cowpox, you will get immunity from smallpox. And he did some more experiments, and finally this first vaccine was born. First vaccine was basically cowpox pus, which was injected into the people to protect them from smallpox. So this is cowpox. And Vaccine Maitri, as you know, is vaccine diplomacy. So when we developed vaccines, Honorable Prime Minister declared that these vaccines will be used for the benefit of entire world. And we liberally supplied our vaccines first to our neighbors, and then to other developing countries, and later on to even the developed countries under the banner of this vaccine friendship, which has been named as Vaccine Maitri.
So do you really think that India is the vaccine superpower?
Definitely. I don't think many people in the audience know that we produce 62% of world's total vaccine production. And we import 77% of what we produce. So we are supplying vaccines to 170 countries. All the UNICEF vaccines, Gavi vaccines, they are sourced from India. So our USP is high quality, low cost vaccines. And because of the volume of production, in 3 children, every 2 children, they get vaccine made in India. So this is kind of a thing. And we have the world's largest single manufacturer, which is that Serum Institute of India. So India is definitely a vaccine superpower.
But I would still argue that in spite of making from a production point of view, we being the number one, from a research and technology point of view, we still seem to be lagging. Like we couldn't make an mRNA vaccine, for example.
Yes, you have hit the nail on the head. Definitely our USP is the high volume and low cost. But in terms of the funds which are going into vaccine research, in terms of high value of the vaccines, we are not, in terms of value, we are not the leaders. In terms of new discoveries also, we are not the leaders, but of late, we are having many firsts. Do you know that the first DNA vaccine against COVID was developed in India recently? The first nasal vaccine, intranasal vaccine for COVID was developed in India. So our research is picking up. So we will be soon, I hope, will be the leader in value too.
You mentioned in the book that even before science, I mean the Western science so-called, India traditionally had vaccines.
Yes.
Could you explain that?
Yes, very interesting question, Sam. So all of us, the entire world says that vaccines were developed in the West. The first vaccine was discovered by Edward Jenner. But I don't believe that. What I believe is that the world's first vaccine was developed by India. And there is a reason behind that. And that reason is that even in the ancient times, like 380 BC, we had a practice in India which is called variolation. And what is this variolation? In variolation, it was very simple strategy that we have a category of people or a class of people or experts, I would say. They were called tikadars. Tika in Hindi means injection. So they were tikadars. They used to collect pus from the smallpox patients every year. Pus and scabs of smallpox patients, because smallpox was affecting so many people every year. And they used to dry this pus and scabs for 1 year. What was the reason for drying? Reason was to weaken the virus, what we call as attenuation. So they used to make the virus very weak. And then next year they will go to the villages, and whoever wanted to get vaccinated, they will make a cut in the arm of that person, small cut, superficial. Take that powder on a piece of cotton, put some Gangajal on it or some water on it, and then tie it to the arm of that, on the wound. So slowly that virus will go in the bloodstream. It will cause smallpox, but that version of smallpox used to be very, very mild. So, and the person used to recover very soon. So this was the practice which from India traveled to the entire world. It went to China, it went to Turkey, it went to finally to Europe, then to Russia, and even to Americas. So till 1796, before that cowpox vaccine was developed, this variolation technique used to protect people from smallpox. And this was a kind of vaccination only because a weakened virus was injected in the bloodstream of the person to make him immune against smallpox. So the concept was the same.
The book has, so well researched. There are so many references. But more interestingly, there are so many stories, not just on the COVID, but all the other various vaccines that were developed from cholera to rabies. So maybe can you share a couple of interesting stories to the audience?
Yeah, as I have said that there is a story behind each vaccine, development of each vaccine. So there is similarly the first modern vaccine, I would say, I am calling it modern because our ancient research has not been recognized so far by the world. So the first vaccine developed was definitely the smallpox vaccine, cowpox. The second vaccine which was developed, but the first one to be developed in India was of plague. And plague was also another disease which was very, very rampant. So the plague had come to India in 1892 from the Middle East. Through a ship it came to Mumbai and it was spreading very fast. So the governor of Mumbai became very worried and he invited a scientist who is named John Hopkins to develop a vaccine and gave him a small room in a school to develop it. So Hopkins worked day and night and he came up with a vaccine within 3-4 months. And then he had a characteristic signature style to test the vaccine. And what was that style? That he used to inject himself first. So he used to be the first kind of recipient or first guinea pig of his own vaccine. So he tested the vaccine on himself. Then he had fever and recovered. And then second, where the trial would happen. So in old times the trial used to happen in prisons. So this vaccine was then tested in Baikula House of Prisons in Mumbai, found to be safe, and then it was kind of all the people were vaccinated in India and people were saved from plague.
And the rabies? The rabies?
Yeah, rabies also there is another interesting story. Rabies used to kill so many people because of the transmission from dog. And there's French scientist Louis Pasteur. He was doing research on this. He was injecting rabies virus into rabbits and doing some research. So a boy got many dog bites and his mother was desperate how to save the child because in rabies death is almost 100%. So she had heard about Louis Pasteur and she somehow approached him. Louis Pasteur had not tested his vaccine by then, but on her repeated request, Louis Pasteur injected the boy with this rabbit spinal cord fluid. So, and it was a series of injections. The oldest spinal cord fluid was injected first, then more fresh spinal cord because more strong virus, then more strong virus. So, on 18 days successively that was injected and the boy got saved from rabies. Even earlier also, till very recently in case of rabies, we used to have 9 injections because the more and more fresh virus used to get injected. So that way the rabies vaccine was also born in France.
I think Dr. Yadav is getting a little tired. So I will pose a question to the audience just to make sure that you are also with me. Anyone among you who have not been vaccinated? Raise your arm.
Only one.
One is there or as a joke or a real person?
So the probability of vaccinated is almost 99.99.
Yeah. Well, another reason for asking is that I'm leading to a question from there is that like I live in the US and if I had asked the same question to an audience there, I mean a well-educated audience in a city, at least 30% or 35% would have raised their hands. So that means about 30 to 35% of the so-called educated people from the world's most advanced country refuse to take the vaccine, in spite of the vaccine being available free. Not like in India where you have to go around. I mean, you know, such a large country there, the transportation availability, the healthcare system is also advanced. But 30 to 35% of the people just won't take vaccine, whatever. What do you have to say about that, doctor?
No, this is vaccine hesitancy, and vaccine hesitancy has been also as old as vaccines. So people are scared of vaccines. Why? Because some people don't have faith, some people get misinformation, some people are scared of needle. So they are hesitant to vaccines. But fortunately in our country, there were so many instances of vaccine hesitancy, but slowly we overcome them. I'll tell you one instance. In Himachal Pradesh, there is a place called Malana. So in Malana, somehow people believed they have a deity, that Malana ka deity. So that the god, they said that local god has commanded that no vaccine should be there. So people were not coming forward for vaccine. So the administration slowly convinced their leaders. Then they organized a yag, just a kind of prayer to please the god, and that was a way to tell people that they were not wrong, but now the god is pleased, and the god got happy, and then the god gave them command that get vaccinated. So everyone got vaccinated. So there are so many such instances where our health workers worked very hard to overcome vaccine hesitancy. But because of vaccine hesitancies, there have been so many deaths of vaccine preventable diseases in the world. So I would say it's not a good thing. I'm very happy that people here are so aware that hardly there was one hand, and that too probably in a very lighter vein someone raised the hand, but everyone else is vaccinated. So that's a very, very good thing.
But Dr. Yadav, I would like to go a little different direction from there, or an angle. I know the vaccine hesitancy is there. People just being afraid of an unknown thing and anything. But in the US and in some of the European countries, there is like a real strong movement, two parts of it. One is sort of the anti-science. Second is a sort of anti-government, you know.
Yes.
So you have anything to comment on that? On why that type of a feeling? I mean, science has given us so much. So why is there things against the scientific temper?
I think so. I agree with you that there is a lobby, which is, you say, anti-science, and there is anti-vaxxers are also very, very strong. And that is because of their kind of, I would say, their leadership, their upbringing, their thought process, their lack of faith in science. But that kind of situation is fortunately not there in India. We believe in science and we have faith in science.
So one of the things that we are seeing progress is in the vaccine area is something called therapeutic vaccines. Because typically when we talk about a vaccine is taken to prevent some disease from coming. But a new area that has been developing is to have the vaccines which are put in after you get a disease. So those are called therapeutic vaccines. I saw a chapter on that, doctor. So could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so far all of us know that vaccines have been developed to prevent diseases. But now there is a lot of research going on where the vaccines will be used to treat diseases. And these diseases would be like chronic diseases like cancer, that diabetes, then this type of diseases, arthritis. So there's a lot of research in cancer going on for vaccines which are known as therapeutic vaccines because they are going to treat the disease. So in therapeutic vaccines, especially against cancer, the vaccine will give a command to the cells of the body to produce an antibody against cancer cells. So after getting the vaccine, those antibodies will be developed which will eat away the cancer cell in different parts of the body. So thus it will prevent us from, so it will treat cancer. So I'm sure that in a decade at least, if not earlier, we will have vaccines against these kind of chronic diseases and these lifestyle diseases also.
So So sort of training our immune system to fight the disease.
Yeah, training our own immune system to fight rheumatic arthritis, to fight cancer, and to fight other that chronic kind of diseases. Yes.
I think in cancer they are all called immunotherapies. They fall in the group of immunotherapies.
Yeah, immunotherapy is also, I would say, there is another way of immunotherapy, and that is like when you get a snake bite. So there is no time to give vaccine for the body to produce kind of antibody. So you directly inject antibodies or immunity. So this kind of immunotherapy is also there. Similarly, in COVID treatment, there was a class of treatment which was immunotherapy, where antibodies were injected directly to the person, so that by the time the body produces its own antibodies, there is a stock of army. It is like an army fight. So body produces its own army, but sometimes when body is taking time to recruit or produce army, you give a small troop of army to the body that in the meantime, please hold on and fight the disease.
Very good example. So what is the future of the vaccine industry in India?
You are a businessman, so you want to invest or
to
what?
make use of the time that I get here to get some tips.
Yeah, I would say future of vaccine industry in India is very bright. One, already we are the biggest, largest producers of vaccines in terms of volume. But now our vaccine manufacturers are growing in size. Our research and our scientists, they are doing more and more research. There is a lot of procedural simplification also, that regulatory process has been simplified. Even Indian companies are taking over vaccine manufacturing companies abroad. So because of these new discoveries in terms of new vaccines, in terms of new class of vaccines, as we have said, therapeutic vaccines, bridge vaccines also, and also the new methods of administration of vaccines like nasal vaccines, skin patches, jet injectors. Because of that, Indian vaccine industry is bound to grow very fast. You can invest.
Thank you. In the book, the best part I liked actually was the epilogue at the end, right? When you're talking about the new technologies. Do you want to add as something more about some of the new technologies that we can expect?
I think the new technology which was used, I would say not discovered, but used during COVID times was messenger RNA technology. So traditionally we used to have vaccines by weakening the disease causing organism or killing the organism and then injecting that organism. So that kind of method of production of vaccines was there. But this messenger RNA is a totally different technique. So what is messenger RNA? As the name suggests, it is a message. So the vaccine just contains a kind of a software. You are a software man. So it contains a kind of a software. So when injected in the body, that software sequence or genetic sequence goes to the body cell, and it directs the body cell to produce the protein of that disease-causing organism. So the disease-causing organism protein is produced immediately by the body, so the body considers it as enemy and then produces antibody against it. So the advantage, what is the advantage of this platform? The advantage is very quick development of vaccines, because you don't have to grow the disease-causing organism in lab and then kill it or weaken it. But you have to just, if there is a new disease, just change the code. As software man, you would know that changing a code is very easy. So change the code, the body will produce a different protein for a different organism and different antibodies.
Thank you. Yeah, that takes us, another offbeat question or a discussion is that as Dr. Yadav said, we can easily change the code. That becomes the power, we have the power now to change the code. So Dr. Yadav, what are the other implications of that? Like now anybody can create a new virus.
Everybody can create a new virus. That is difficult, I would say. They are just doing a protein sequencing code. It should not be taken that people can create virus and do biological warfare out of it. But more threat is coming from zoonotic diseases.
Yeah.
from where did this COVID came?
Maybe
It came from bat.
You should explain zoonotic, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So zoonotic diseases are the diseases which come from animals. And why are they coming more now? Because the habitat of animal is shrinking, so they are more coming in contact with human beings. Also, we are kind of making new and new food. China people, they make food from bat. So there are a lot of viruses of bat coming up. So all these, you would say that the sequence or the frequency of epidemics and pandemics of new diseases has increased. Largely because from the animals the viruses are jumping to human beings, because animals are coming more in contact with us. So that's the major threat to us, and we should counter that threat.
I'd also like to point out that everybody worries about the humans, but we should also worry about the animals, because there's a lot of diseases which are jumping from us to animals. In fact, this part of Kerala is very much in contact with the wildlife. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot of cases of human TB jumping to elephants. So we can see most of the elephants, even in the wild, all the elephants in the zoo have TB, human TB. The only reason that they don't die is that TB takes a long time to kill. But so recently we all discovered that this TB has even jumped to all the wild elephants. So most of the elephants in Kerala and this part of South India unfortunately have human TB. Similarly, there's a lot of diseases going back and forth. Monkey malaria. Mm-hmm. So Calicut and Kasargod, we have had a lot of problems of monkey malaria, things that we will need to address. So shall I jump to the audience or any other points that you would like to add? No? Okay. So,
anything, then we can add.
So if you would like to ask any questions.
Good evening. Good evening, Dr. Yadav. As someone who's exposed so much length and breadth of vaccine research, I would like to know what is your personal position on the conspiracy theory behind the origin of the COVID virus.
Sorry? Voice is not clear.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just interested to know what is your personal stance on the various conspiracy theories we hear about the origin of the COVID virus, because you've been so much into vaccine research.
Yeah, so there is a lot of discussion into from where the COVID virus came from. So many people, I think audience, many of them, the general thing they know is that it came from Wuhan, China. But in Wuhan, China, where it came from, where it jumped into human beings, how it infected human beings. So a theory which is kind of supported and kind of spread by China is that it was a natural transmission from a bat to human beings. It is a bat virus which has come to human beings through food route or through the Wuhan seafood market or animal market or through interaction. So it emerged kind of a naturally from animal to human beings. But there are so many questions on that theory, so many question marks have been put. And one of the reasons is that there are so many reasons. So one is that there is a Wuhan Institute of Virology, which is situated very close to this seafood market where they say that that virus came from. So this Wuhan Institute of Virology is, since decades, is conducting research on viruses, especially coronavirus. And there is a famous scientist in that, which is Miss Jangeli, who is known as Bat Woman of China. So they are doing a lot of research in modification of the viruses and all that stuff. And there are reports of intelligence agencies, British and US agencies, that scientists of this Wuhan Institute of Virology, they fell sick with COVID type symptoms couple of months before emergence of COVID. So that has given a very strong ground, and China has not shared their activity log of these scientists, their data with the world. Second, WHO had commissioned an inquiry into this, that origin of the virus. China opposed it for many months, and ultimately after 9-10 months the team went to China to investigate. And there also, China made sure that there are 50% scientists in the team were Chinese. And then important data was not given to that team, so which again kind of reinforced that something is wrong. Third, the team was not able to find case 0. Case 0 is the first case which is affected by the virus. So that is very important to define the origin. Next point was that there was no intermediate host which could be found, and the bats which have this kind of viruses, they are about 1500 kilometers away from Wuhan. So that theory that it came from bat naturally was kind of, it has so many question marks. So both the theories are there, natural origin as well as leak from the lab. WHO says chances are natural origin, but many people says high chances of leak from the lab. Thank you.
So I will use a Malayalam statement to add to that. നമ്മൾ പറയല്ലോ ചത്തത് കീചകനെങ്കിൽ കൊന്നത് if കീചകൻ died, that must be Bhima, right, in Mahabharata.
Hi, sir.
Yeah.
Two questions.
Yes.
First one is, mRNA vaccines have more efficacy, like Pfizer and Johnson and all. Why India didn't allow mRNA vaccines to be produced in India? That's one question.
Okay.
Second one is, even AIDS is a zoonotic disease, right? It came from animals. And why there is no vaccine as of now?
Okay. So do you know that at what temperature mRNA vaccines need to be stored? So mRNA vaccines need to be stored at minus 70, 80, ultra low temperatures. And in our country, there is no infrastructure for storing vaccines at such a low temperature. We just store in the fridge, that refrigeration temperature. That is one that in India, mRNA vaccines have not done very well. They are not popular. Second, efficacy-wise, I don't think that Indian vaccines are lower in efficacy. They are also very efficacious, but more so because of our entire system of vaccination, that universal immunization program, the cold chain. This is all suited for our vaccines which require 3-4 degrees Celsius temperature and not ultra low temperature. It's very, very costly to have vaccines stored at ultra low temperatures. Second, you asked about the AIDS vaccine. AIDS also, there is research going on since so many years on development of the vaccine, and we all hope that the vaccine should come fast. But I think the major hitch in that is very fast mutation of the vaccine because of the virus. So as I have said, that fighting a disease is like army and enemy battle. So when the body sees the enemy, it produces army. But in this case, the enemy changes. So how the body will kill that enemy because of the very fast mutation. So that is one of the challenges in development of HIV vaccines.
So there is a question from the audience. I'll read out the question to you, sir. Do you endorse the view that vaccine-wise, Indians are copycats and rather reverse engineers? We mimicked UK and US.
I would like to disagree with my friend who has posed this question. So we are not mimicking vaccine production. See, our Covishield which we have developed is through a transparent technology transfer agreement. We have not copied. So we have got the technology, we have got the vaccine material from there, and we are producing the vaccine. But in case of Covaxin, it's totally Indian vaccine. It is Indian creation. The virus was identified, isolated by Indian Council of Medical Research scientists. It was then, vaccine was developed by Indian scientists. Technology was transferred to Bharat Biotech for production of vaccine. And similarly, in many rotavirus vaccine also we developed on our own. So there are many vaccines which have been developed in the West, but we are producing them. But there are many vaccines which our own scientists have developed. So we should not degrade our scientists. They have done tremendous, wonderful work. So we are not copycats.
Any other questions? Yeah. There, the gentleman. There.
Very good evening, sir. Sir, in your statement, you said that, we are the largest producer of vaccine. But if you see, world over, that corona was highly disruptive, and everywhere there was a death. But in India, if you look at the more number of death, which is very high. And I have a question. Actually, you are saying that even it's a conspiracy theory which is started from China. But my question to you is that even though we are the largest producer and we Indians died more than any other countries, but whereas Chinese prevented, but now there is a news that in China there is a COVID. So in that context, actually, do you think that in future, there will be a chance that again it will be coming to India? I mean that more.
Do you want to know whether the COVID will again come to India?
Yes.
Okay, very good question. And many of us are worried about it. Wave 3, wave 4, wave 5. In my view, we have got large number of people vaccinated. So we are immune. And not only vaccinated, many people had COVID also subsequently, symptomatically or asymptomatically, mild or severe. So we have sufficient immunity, that is one. Second, there is virus mutation, but our vaccines are preventing against even that changed enemy. Enemy has changed a little bit, but it has not changed that much that the body's army is not recognizing the enemy. So that is, and new strains of vaccines. When a new vaccine is coming up, it is coming up with protection against the new enemy also. And what has historically been seen in such viral epidemics and pandemics, that slowly the virus weakens and phases out. Like Ebola happened, SARS-1 happened, then that Middle East respiratory syndrome erupted. So all these they went up, then they slowly the virus lost its virulence, its dangerousness, and then it faded away. So in this case also, I am pretty sure that because of the immunity that we have developed and slowly the tendency of virus to fade into a lesser and lesser difficult one, we will not have any such wave of COVID.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
I would like to know your opinion about taking booster doses.
Yes.
Because there's a section of media that says that vaccines are not to be taken every year, like in the case of other medicines. So do you recommend taking booster doses of vaccine?
See, scientifically, this kind of vaccines, they provide protection for a limited period, because then body slowly starts forgetting that it is an enemy. So you have to tell the body again that the enemy is still around. So I would suggest that take the booster, especially those who are of old age and who are immunocompromised. They should definitely take the booster, and others also should take the booster if they like. Because in West, he would be knowing that there are flu shots every year. It is like a flu only. Yeah. And every year they decide that which are the flu viruses prevalent, and then they make a vaccine against it. So most likely in the flu shots itself, you will get the boosters in the times to come.
Yeah. Anybody else? Any other questions? I think there's a mic there.
There. Yes, please. Mic, please.
Sir, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sir, I'm actually currently pursuing my master's in public health. So I have two questions for you. Sir, can you elaborate on the One Health approach that is in India right now on zoonotic diseases and vaccines? And the second one is, as Sam sir said, the zoonotic diseases are not only going from animals to humans, but humans to animals too. So how important is it that we vaccinate these animals also, like the bats, the monkeys, the dogs and all that?
Okay, so I think you have very rightly pointed out, One Health is the new concept coming. One Health basically means that health is one, be it animal health, be it human health, because the rate of transmission between human, animal, animal, human, it has gone up so much. So in the Ministry of Animal Husbandry also, they are coming up with a big World Bank project of One Health. And the entire concept now is moving towards One Health. So it's very, very important to study that. Second, in terms of vaccinating the animals, it would really depend on, see, I have not seen many. There are some diseases like he has mentioned, transmitting from human to animals. There is especially tuberculosis, it goes to the cow also, it goes to elephant, he has said. So, but best is to not to touch the habitat of the wild animals. Let them enjoy their habitat and let's enjoy our part. Why we encroach on their habitat and then try to treat them, vaccinate them and domesticate them. So it is a very important thing to maintain the ecosystem. And yes, if there are some kind of dangerous diseases, definitely the precaution and treatment for them should happen.
The elephants don't read our notices, so they keep coming into the towns.
Who has constructed?
Hello, sir.
Yes, please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So, you already said that the so-called developed, well-educated country people were refused to take vaccinations in a large number for several reasons, as you said. So, my question is, as of now, you already said like 90% of Indian people already took vaccination. So the early period after developing vaccine, what are the basic initiatives that took from Indian Health Ministry and vaccination producing team to aware people to took vaccine? Thank you, sir.
Oh, very good question. So, see, initially there was lot of, I would say, eagerness to take vaccine because there was first wave going on. So, many people went for vaccine because the first round was for the health workers only and they were aware also, so they went for it. And then the number of, because disease suddenly after first wave, the disease was not around. So many people decided not to take vaccine. That time, the efforts of the leadership came. Our Prime Minister announced Tika Utsav, celebration of vaccination as a festival in April 2021. And then it picked up some pace. Later on, because of second wave, again there was so much of vaccine eagerness, everyone came. But then also the interest declined. So in this, the credit, I would say, goes to definitely the government machinery, but also the people in general. So not only our health workers, have you seen, they went even in boats, they went to the fields, took the vaccine on cycles, on scooties, they convinced people, sometimes they were chased away by people, but still they went back to convince them. So we have a very important role of our ANMs and nurses and paramedical workers who are really at the ground level, who did this work day and night to convince people there. Definitely there is role of leadership, but I would attribute this feat more to the grassroots level workers in the field who made sure that everyone is vaccinated. So in my book you will see photographs, people, health workers crossing river with half waist deep in water or going on boat or JCVs to go to inaccessible areas or trekking on foot. So because of those, we are grateful that we have so many vaccinations.
If everybody is finished, I think we can wrap it up.
Yeah.
One question, sir.
Yeah, one question. Yeah, last question.
Sir, I am doing internship in Calicut Medical College. I am also interested in public health. I have to, in recent time in Kerala, I hope you heard about the recent outbreak of rabies. What will be the reason for that? If the primary care of the washing the wound is difficult, or the zero conversion vaccine quality, if there is a compromise in the vaccine quality, or is there any disruption in the cold chain? In that situation, vaccine failures, how will we take? How can we tackle that situations? How can aware the public about the vaccine failures? Because these vaccine failures are making a kind of hesitancy in the people. So what measures we want to take to avoid that? That's my question, sir.
Are you talking about vaccine failure for COVID?
No, I am recent incident happened in Kerala. Rabies, some of the rabies vaccines.
Oh.
Some of the cases
Yes,
were
yes.
died even after taking the vaccines.
Respected
Okay,
speakers,
okay.
I'm sorry for the interruption, but we've run out of time. We have
Yeah,
to
I
move
just
on.
quickly would say that we have to make sure that the cold chain is maintained. You are yourself a medical student. So if we have proper cold chain maintenance and rigorous testing of vaccines, such instances won't happen. Thank you.